Hello, my delicious co-creators. Lilou here. I'm in Tucson with a man you probably recognize because I'm sitting next to Carlos Nakai. Hello.
Hello.
Nice to meet you in person.
Mm-hmm. Good to meet you too.
It's not in Hawaii because I just heard you came back from Hawaii and you love Hawaii. You've been touring with Peter Cater that I also had the pleasure to interview. You are really the most famous, we can say, all around the world of the native, how do you say it, Native American flute. Right? This is your instrument. This is an instrument that you maybe didn't start your career with. I heard that you were originally very much into the bass or the trumpet, and then you had this car accident. So I'm very interested to hear how this represents actually a pivotal, I guess, moment in your life, right?
Well, it was at the moment because I thought my world had ended. I was studying music in Flagstaff at Arizona State College at the time, and hoped to get into the military and then have the military send me to Juilliard and Rochester and Berkeley and all the other schools of music. But that never happened because of the accident, which damaged my embouchure enough that I can play, but I can't play as well as I used to.
So that was the mouth.
Yeah, the mouth.
And how old were you then?
About 20, 22, somewhere in there. I don't remember.
And what's extraordinary is that you are Navajo, right?
No, I'm also Ute, and I'm also Zuni,
Okay.
and I'm also Celt. So,
But the flute is very much part of your culture.
no, not really. The flute actually, when it came to us from Europe, then many natives began taking it up and crafting it according to what they saw in the instrument and how it produced different pitches based on how they made them. So, of course, when I started back in 1976, there were very few people who knew anything about what the flute was, how it was used, what its origins were, how would you make one if you were needing to have a flute, what tribes used them. You know, all of that history and background wasn't there. So I began researching and finding out many different things about the instrument.
That's interesting because we see it as Native American, but it's not.
Yeah, well, I don't like the word Native American because that refers to people who came to this country from other places.
That's not the truth, definitely. Excuse me for that. Excuse me, my not knowing that. And there's many things. I believe like ignorance is one of the main things that we need we need to learn. Basically, the more knowledge we have, then the more understanding, the more compassion, the more connection we can have.
Well, many of the people in indigenous cultures were here before. This whole continent was named after Amerigo Vespucci, by the Queen of Spain. And so we were here already. And many of the tribes have their own names for what this landmass represents to them. Like on the East Coast, because of Florida and because of Maine, they say the whole place is shaped like a turtle. But when you pull back and actually look at it, you say, well, on our side, there is no turtle. But there's a long mountain range that goes from, the northern part of Alaska all the way down to Tierra del Fuego, way at the end of the earth, the other end. And we called it Snake Island because of that long mountain range. Yeah. And so, Native Americans are those of African, European, and Asian descent who were thrown away here because they wanted to be different. And so even today, I think there's a lot of guilt because they don't want to consider themselves natives to America, but they come from Europe, Asia, or Africa. And you go, well, if you were born here, you belong here. You can never be what you were before. But your ancestry and your history is what's more important than trying to identify now with what you can never be. And so a lot of that romantic understanding, inhabits many people today, and they want me to carry the guilt, other Native people to carry the guilt, and we won't do that. So we're too busy trying to survive from one day to the next, Yeah.
Is there something, you're mentioning the guilt right now, is there something else that you think the Navajos or the Ute are carrying, like that is really like a burden, and you think that would be tremendous to lift off and or to forgive or to. I remember interviewing this Algonquin chief, Dominique Rankin, up in Montreal. That went through horrible things in his childhood, and he was pulled, and he couldn't speak his own language, and he was raped, and there was all these things that are really a lot to carry in the heart.
Well, every culture on the planet, there isn't one anywhere that hasn't been impacted by one kind of colonialism or, movement by other cultures against them to create change. So American Indians or indigenous people of the Americas, they fall into the same category. But it's not remembering what happened, because you can never change what occurred. But you sure can change how you will be tomorrow. So I'm more future-oriented than looking back and having anger, because even in today's world, there are people, again, of European, Asian, and African descent who want to identify with being a native of this continent. And that's very easy to do. You learn the history of your family, the struggle to survive, the hardships they've all gone through, and then have them tell you stories of why are we here in this country when we should be somewhere else. And then they'll tell you the story of that, extreme conflict that occurred. And you learn from that, and rather than being angry, you spend your time unlearning it and going out into the world and doing something significant that will contribute to the way we are now. So that's what I do, and that's what I teach.
Yeah, I love how you really get close to, or you play with other artists around the world, and you're very much international. I guess you were criticized probably for that in your with your siblings or your peers, or because I can see how once you pioneer things, or you're out there and you put yourself out there and you put your heart out. I see it with what I do too. How you receive the arrows in your back from doing something different, from getting closer.
Well, when the change came for us about 250 years ago, when they began this thing called a reservation period, when the federal government started little areas of land, like little states here and there where natives could live, they also quit doing ceremonies and those things that would bring us into the future. So many indigenous people today in North America, they spend their time looking back. They spend their time doing ceremonies that were before the last, let's say, 1890s, when the last tribe signed a treaty with the United States. And I've always wondered, where are the songs for living in the 20th century? And where are the new songs for living in the 21st century? Most natives say that when the white man, whoever that is, came, I've never seen a white person, so I don't know. They say that that's when they destroyed our culture and we have nothing left. And I have to argue with that one, because I still do my prayers in the morning. And I live here in this nice house, in Tucson, and when my cats were alive, they would join me and sit by me while I'm doing my prayers in the morning. And then we would all drink water and think about being alive, and doing all of that. So it's still possible to do that, but we need the new songs. We need the songs of the 20th century. And they're not there, and most natives will say, well, if you know so much, maybe you should do it. And I said, well, I'm not a historian. And I said, because all those songs from way back when are our history of survival, and I don't know how to put them in the proper context so that it can be shared among the community,
But I guess in your cells, in your DNA, in your blueprint, you're carrying that, and you are doing it in a in a connected modern way through your songs, right? So you are. How do you actually create? I mean, how this process so that you can still be connected to your culture and share something that is modern and where anybody could connect with?
Well, the connection will always be there, but it's the reaching into the, let's say, the philosophies of the people that I come in contact with. So that I would have to say that yes, the old songs are there that come from ceremonies and other social events. But how many times can you do those over and over? I mean, like here in this country, we listen to Tchaikovsky and Beethoven and Mozart and all of that every year, but it never changes. I mean, those songs were written 200 to 300 years ago, so let's do something else. Let's do some modern stuff, but the modern composers aren't looked upon as being important. Only that which comes from a romantic past is real. And you go, no. So I take the influence of, let's say in this case, the Western European discipline of music, which I learned, and my understanding of history and working as a cultural anthropologist to go beyond where we thought we were at one moment in time and say, I live in a multicultural community now. In the American community, there are people from all over the planet who live here today. And even
very rich, yeah.
Yeah, it's a very rich culture of diverse peoples, of multicultural peoples, of multicultural experiences. There's not just one. And if you go, you can see it in the foods, you can see it in the music, you can see it in the clothing that we wear, and all of these things that I'll talk about mixing and blending. So my understanding was to take the music that I know comes from an older tradition, but let's bring it up and make it relevant to people who are from other places and put it in a language that other people can understand. And so I've built this kind of music expression that I call, let me see what else this flute can do.
Yes.
Let me see what else it's capable of performing. And that's what I do every day.
In my personal experience, and I'm grateful, I know millions of people, hundreds of thousands of people, because you sold so many copies, I think over 1 million, but there's of this trilogy, Canyon Trilogy, where I feel it's therapeutic, it's medicinal. I remember listening to it and discovered it many years ago, 15 years ago, while studying, listening to it, and how it would just calm my body, my heart open, my soul connected to spirit. How is this possible? Like interviewing other musicians or artists around the world, I get that sometimes it's a divine flow, it's a connection to nature. How does how can it be so perfect? Like I feel it's beyond human, it's beyond you. You're kind of like this, can we say channel?
I probably could say it might be a channeling effect of one kind or another, because I've had significant dreams when I began this whole adventure, being visited by young men in business suits and, older people and, and others, and being exposed to the sense that I have to do something important that helps others.
Healing.
Yeah, healing, whatever. And when I began the project, there were many people, and in fact, in this country, the United States, they were getting more involved into Western and Eastern things, In this country, in the Western part, it was trying to find a link to how can I learn spirituality on a level where I can make it a part of my own. So they would find native teachers here and there and say, tell me the stories and how can I make my stories like yours? So they've been doing that for quite a while. And then in the Eastern methods of getting in touch with yourself, now we have yoga, now we have meditation processes of all kinds, and now we listen to musics, by people that will put you in a particular kind of space. And so I thought, well, maybe I should do something like that. And Canyon Trilogy came out because it was primarily an improvisation based on my, let's say, either intuition or experiences in my life or things that I wanted people to experience as they were listening to this music. And so I did that.
You did that pretty rapidly, you mean quickly, because it was an improv? So what, you had those tones, you started hearing them, or you started writing, or how?
No.
Just recording?
Yeah, just recording at the moment. And I think that recording took 2.5 hours or so. And we were done. That's all I needed to do. And we added a couple pieces, afterwards. But the original Canyon Trilogy is still being used by people who do, different kinds of body work and therapy of all kinds, and people who just listen to it from one moment to the next. I've had people who've said, this child was born as we were listening to your music. This child was delivered in the hospital listening to your music. And I go, oh, okay. So it's used for sexual pleasure too. And I always think that's very funny, because it's like, oh, okay, so people use this music for all kinds of stuff,
This must have surprised you somewhat, how people started listening to it, buying into it. Did you had that as an expectation, or a kind of, wow, what is going on here, kind of?
Yeah, it's more like, wow, what's going on? Let's do more of this. People seem to like this. And I think they like the free-flowing approach rather than me saying, this is a very sacred song to one tribe or another, and I'm going to play it exactly the way it was sung way back when. You say, no, let's do something different. Let me take it and make a variation that people can listen to and say, I like that song.
That's what's beautiful, I think, about human beings, is when we can just be who we are ourselves and not have so much culture, must-do protocols and all that, because then we lose ourselves and we're not really shining our true nature.
Right. Well, culture kind of gets in the way. It allows people to create blocks and boundaries and say, you can't go beyond that because you're not of my culture, or I can't influence you because my culture says this, or, but the human experience is very similar all over this planet. There is no human experience that's so significant that it can't be shared by others. I haven't found any, at least in my lifetime. I work with people from all different walks of life, people from many different cultural perspectives and philosophies. And I go, in my tribe, we think that way too. So what makes your way so different from mine? Oh, you have to wear certain clothing. I said, well, I'll wear a T-shirt. I'll wear some shorts and maybe my flip-flops, and, and I'll do that. And they'll say, no, you have to respect my culture. I say, well, I think I do, but I also need to acknowledge that the influences of what you're telling me about your culture are going to rub off on me and will more than likely end up in one music production or another that I'm doing, or in a lecture demonstration session that I do in public places and universities, And I said, so what you tell me is what I learn. And so I said, and I'm still learning. Even though I've been everywhere, I'm still learning every day. Yeah. And the most important learning experience for me now, and I realize after a time, is sit down and listen to that 6-year-old person. Sit down and listen to that teenager. Because they're new here in the world. And they know from the world they came from, this is what you need to do here to make things better. No, and they know already. I mean, they say some remarkable things all the time.
Yes. And I guess also nature. Do you feel this deep connection? Because there's some prayers in the Ute, that are related to the Father Son, to connecting in the prayers. Do you do that kind of prayers, or is it more? How do you connect? Is that through nature? Is that through the Father Son, through the Mother Earth? Is it how all this plays for you? No. Through the animals? You have wonderful animals all around here. I mean, we're surrounded by cactuses and the desert and the mountains. It's so special.
Well, hopefully the coyote boys will come and sing a little bit before we get through.
Not the rattlesnake, please. I heard that was
the rattlesnake. She might be curled up somewhere because it's getting cool. But we keep her around because she eats the rats and things that we don't want. But the songs and prayers that I do come from a very old, in fact, every culture has this. It's a very old responsibility that we have assumed to make sure that the world returns in a good way tomorrow. So it's never based on me in the world, but it's based on the world as a whole. And I would have to say that my spiritual center resides in the chart called a periodic table of the elements. And in some of the old cultures, you'll see circles of various kinds with little cross designs going through them, or spokes of various kinds. And those are elements. In this case, it would be the element oxygen and hydrogen. And then the one with spokes are compounds. And what those people were trying to say in the old days is, we are everything that exists around us, because everything on this planet inhabits that periodic table of elements. There is nothing outside of us that man creates. Everything is natural. So you have to regard it and respect how we've taken those things and turned them into useful objects. See? And
we remove maybe the sacred in this, how actually we a lot of the things, or are they there anyway, regardless on how they were created? That's my question.
Well, you get the understanding that all the living life forms, we were just talking about the rattlesnake and the coyotes and the birds and all the plants around us, they all inhabit a genetic code that we all carry. It's all the same. There's a little variation here and there, but there's no difference from that bush, from that agave, from the rattlesnake, from the coyotes who will be singing, I hope, and the birds. It's all the very same genetic code. And
I was more referring to the modern object creating in our world, or the fast food restaurants, or all of this,
Well, let's say the modern objects.
You see the sacred everywhere.
Yeah, the microphone, the steel in that post holding up my roof, the visual tool that you're working with, all of that is made up of those periodic table elements. So there's nothing nothing that's man-made. It was already here. We just took it and changed it a little bit. And being on a carbon-based planet, of course, then all you have to do is learn the science and then realize that this is a very spiritual thing that scientists do. Because they recombine things in such a way that they become useful to others, and they are still realizing that, but it's already been here. I haven't really done anything earth-shattering or groundbreaking because the elements were here. So even
how about the intention, though? Sorry. How about the intention when some people could have bad intentions and some others good intention? Could that also influence those elements? It seems like there's some things going on in this world that, or is it sacred anyway? I mean, you know what I mean. Like the intention behind doing something is so primordial. I mean, so important.
Well, then the intention becomes ego-based. Yes. And those are some of the things that we always, have to deal with. Who is the most important individual in the world? We all are. What is the most important development that's happened in time with the human community? Well, I don't know. There are many of them. And how we use all those gifts that we create that were here already, either to work with others and to be in a good space altogether, or to say, I want this all for myself. So then you get involved in ego, and then you turn it into the opposite. There's the good side and the bad side, they always say, but it's always someone who wants more of something, and you go, why don't you make it yourself then? Learn how to work with it. So we learn to prey on one another at various points in time, but I think that's the greatest thing that, let's say, an impediment right now to us in the world, because we have many people who want to impress themselves on others in the world today. And so they have wars and they have strife and they have conflicts of all kinds. And it's like, everything is important. It's not just one thing or another, it's everything. And if you see everything in the light of we're all connected, it doesn't matter if it's a steel post holding up my roof or this camera with all the components, it's all the same stuff. It's all that periodic table, and the Lakotas have that little sign, a circle of quill work with a cross in it, and they say it's actually a ball. And it represents hydrogen and oxygen, which make water. And that's what keeps us alive on this planet. And when you look at it from the ball concept, then where am I? Well, you're right in the middle, because you have to see the world from that perspective. So we're always looking out, away from ourselves, to see what the world is about.
Or seeking approval.
Yeah, or seeking approval to be out. Yeah, but and that's where the relationship of learning your cardinal directions.
So you pray to the different north, south.
Well, yeah, no, you just recognize them, but there's nothing there. I mean, so there's nothing to pray about or be spiritual about. It's just a direction that was invented by someone. But there are 7 of them for us, 7 sacred directions. In other words, those deal with perspectives of living in the world. And if you go east and south and west and north and out into space, in the upper world, or down to the earth in the inner world, and then where's the last direction?
Here, right here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, inside of you, in your soul. So everyone has that. There's no one without it. And even in the old cultures, when I go to Scotland or Bavaria or Russia or Poland or, all those places, it's the same story there as it is with indigenous people here or down in the rest of American Indian land and, Mexico and Central America and South America and down in the Antarctic, it's all the same perspective. So we're all the same people. Why do we fight with each other?
Good point.
Yeah, but so the way of native peoples, they say, of the American Indian, it's not any different from anyone else's philosophy.
And when you pray, do you connect with your soul, your higher self, or is it inward or outward or both?
No, it's always inward, and it well, for me personally, when I listen to, let's say, if I go to an ashram and they say, join us in a meditation, and I'll sit there with them, and I'll reflect on myself, because there's nothing around me except other people. But the other people, we're not talking and sharing and, bothering each other. We're all reflecting on life itself. And you have to do that once in a while.
Could we say that the outside is an illusion, or there is some kind of, how do you see reality? How do you live it? Because you seem to go inward a lot, which I appreciate hearing, but how do you relate to this outside world?
There is no outside world. It's all a fabrication of ourselves, and psychologists and scientists have been working on this for centuries. How do we see the world? Oh, well, my perspective is this. Oh, but don't you see this too? No, not really. So being in the world is living in a dream, I always say. Because the way I see myself in the world, the way I see the physical world around me varies. So when you see it and you try to explain it to me, then I say, well, I really don't see that. I see something different. So that's where many kinds of discourse, either spiritual or sacred discourse, comes in, because then we have to compare notes. And when we compare notes, we begin to understand that, why, you see things so differently than me. You must be God itself. And I have to say, no, I'm not. You are. No, because you have this awareness. And they say, well, everyone else does. That little cat walking across my yard, or that little coyote who will be singing soon, or that bird sitting on the tree, they all have these awareness, and we're all God itself. Because we have this life, this force within ourselves that is so similar that it's shared among all of us. The trees, the bushes, the microphone, the camera, all of that. It's an electrochemical force. And so if you look, they were saying at one time that I can see an aura around you. And we say, oh, of course. Yeah. But look at that tree. You can see an aura around it too. And look at the water and the fishes in the water. I said, you know what that is? It's when the atoms recombine in certain ways and make compounds. There's an energy that holds it.
Taurus.
Yeah, and that's the aura. It's the electrochemical energy being produced by that compound, and it kind of glows. And if you could feel in a very intimate manner certain things around, you can feel that energy going into your hand. And that's how many people divine illnesses in each other, or someone says, I can smell this, you need to go to a doctor. I think there's something wrong in your body. How do you know that? I went and they said there was a little cancer starting. And I go, gee, you must be a medicine person. And he said, no. I do that. And then you begin talking about how, like you were saying, when you went to Kauai, you would go to where the dolphins are. And once in a while, if they know there's someone ill in the water, then they'll swim right up to you and begin poking you where there's something wrong. And you say, look at what this thing is doing. This little animal is pushing on me. It must like me. And you say, no, it's showing you that there's something wrong there. You need to go to the hospital and have a physician look at it, and they'll find that there's something wrong in there. Because they send out an energy, And again, their aura travels out, and then they can get a return. It's sort of like radar.
They do when they start singing "Oh la 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 la," when they start speaking among themselves, it clears. I had a wonderful experience with them. And where do you think the spirit lies in the body of a human being?
Everywhere.
There's no home like the heart, or no? It's everywhere.
Oh no, it's everywhere. The whole system is moving. Being a photography teacher, I used to tell my students, you can never make a good photograph if you're standing there holding the camera. It doesn't matter how you hold your breath, or you breathe out, or you hold the camera, or you lean against a wall, because your whole system is moving. Your heart's beating, the blood is coursing through the arteries or coming back in the veins, and your whole system is going like that. So how can you make a good sharp photograph when you're doing this? And then you breathe in, so now there's this and that, and you're trying to say, I'm doing an excellent photograph here. Put it on a pedestal, let it sit quietly on something else, and then you'll get what you want. So the system is always alive everywhere, from your smallest toe on either foot all the way up to one or two hairs on the top of your head.
And it's here and there. So it's inside, outside, it's all connected, really. It's everywhere. It's around us, inside of us, though there is some wisdom or some deeper connection inside, or is it like a temple?
No, the wisdom and all of that awareness of connection is all mentally developed based on experience. So you have to have had the experience of being in the world before you can speak about it.
And there's also how about channeling, or how about when you receive information, or all of a sudden intuition or some strong thought? Where does that come from?
Well, that comes from what we unconsciously do is send information out. You want to reach someone, you send information out. I don't know how it works. It may be what they call telepathy, but you can influence someone just by doing that. And a lot of what I do, I think, falls into that realm because the music is an energy. And the vibration of that energy as it travels through the air affects people in different ways. I mean, no one person sitting at any of my events, hears the same thing that, one person and another are hearing. It's all different. And the images they produce in their mind, are like all these different pictures going on at the same time. And I'd love to find some way to connect everyone and see what all these pictures are, but it's not possible.
Put some electrodes on everybody.
Yeah. But the the connection is actually, I think, something that we lost when we were born, when we came here, because children do it when they're very young, and they can connect with either an adult or they can connect with an older person or someone in between and say, but we quickly lose that because we're trained to be social, vocal people. Don't think with your mind. Tell me what you're thinking. And you go, well, if you'll just sit, I'll show you a picture. And people who have pets, they always talk about that. My dog or my cat or, whatever animal they have, my birds. When I stand right close to them, they look at me, and then I see these things in my mind, like they're talking to me or something. I say, yeah, they're communicating without the spoken word.
I have a last question because I could go on for hours to interview you. I'm really enjoying this, so this is easy with you. Definitely a very special moment. But if there is, I hear, we talked earlier about how different people have different dreams, and would you have a one dream? Could we all connect to this one big dream? Is there something? Because it feels like throughout the music and the songs, it connects people. It's one aspect. But is there a big dream that you have, or is there a one dream that we can all kind of plug into and dream this all together so that it happens here on Earth? Is there something like that, or maybe is it part of prophecies of how you were brought up or whatever?
Mm-hmm. No, you don't want to do that because we don't all want to think alike. I mean, that's been tried by many different individuals through time to control others so that we're all the same. And then suddenly their ego gets involved. And now, since I control you, I want you to do this. Yeah.
Without the controlling, I mean, each of us being unique and being one at the same time and having kind of this vision, maybe.
Yeah. The only thing I can say is for people, especially when they're listening to my music, is allow themselves to go into themselves. Because we're time travelers. We've been here for billions of years. And in one of my tribes, they talk about this is how you find out what you know and what you are, is you stand in front of a small light in total darkness, and you let the light shine on you, and then you turn around. And when you turn around, you'll see this shadow going away from you, and it gets bigger and bigger. See? And what that shadow is the history of your life in all the changes you've gone through.
So I'm going to ask you this. Is there a last word of wisdom, something that you can leave us with? This conversation has been very special and definitely can go on for hours, but is there something that you would like to share with us that is dear to your heart and that is important for you to, a word of wisdom? There was many in this interview, but I love your vision of how we're all gods, actually. Huh? This is one of them. We're all living gods. Not in an ego way.
Yeah. Oh, I haven't touched on that one yet. But, I think the most important thing, especially when people are listening to my music, is to go back into themselves and to feel the experience of why they're here. Because we were all born into this world after we filled out a little notepad for ourselves. And then we stuck it in our back pocket. And then we came through the doorway to be born into the world. Most of us have forgotten what we were going to do here. And much of it is to have a good time. Not to worry about the world as it is and what's happening to it. But look here. because the world will take care of itself. But also to realize that the way they feel when they hear my music or they hear something being performed by other people for many different reasons is they are the only one who are hearing it in a manner that is important to them. So in other words, we are very unique as individuals. There's no one else like us in the world. And so I always tell people, say this with me. I am the most important person in my world, not in the world, because no one can speak for all people. No one can speak for all culture. Only a fool does that. But a person who enjoys her life and enjoys being in the world just says, well, I'm important to myself, and that's all. But the other, and what I've discovered from it too, and I've had some very good religious teachers. Unfortunately, they were Jesuits who many religions don't like because they always say, always question. And if you haven't experienced that, then how do you know it's true? And the question they've always asked us is, do you know a God? And have you seen this God? And do you know what it's all about? And no one can answer it. And I think what they were going at and what I discovered from many other native peoples and people of the world, I'm the essence of God itself, as every other living person is. In other words, we were born here into this world to experience like a nerve ending in this huge body, what it is to be here in this form. And then when we move on to the next form, we'll write the note, put it in our back pocket, get born, and do something else. And so to remember, and I write this on many CDs when I sign them, be one, capital O-N-E, in peace, in harmony, in beauty, whatever, and then sign my name. And they always come back and say, how come there's a capital O? I said, because you're God itself. Oh, I could never be. I said, why? Because I'm not perfect. How do you know God is perfect? There is no perfect God. If there was, then they wouldn't waste time being with us because you are the one discovering reality. You are the one discovering what it means to be here. And in all of that discovery, what one should always remember is don't forget to have a good time. See? Be one with yourself. Find those things that you enjoy in the world and just be there and experience it for what it is. Don't try to interpret or, explain it. Just be there. And then you can look at it later and go, wow, I had such a good time there. And I don't know if I can ever do that again. You say, yeah, you can. Once you've done those things, then you can repeat them in your mind. So now you have
inside, you have it all inside.
Yeah, you have it all inside, and you have this process now to meditate on something that is really important to you yourself. Not to anybody else, but just me, And so when I do my music, I'm always hoping people will share that awareness too, and just feel it, because I can feel that energy coming out of the audience at me. And once in a while, I'll feel an energy where we want this. So they take it. And many artists and performing artists who experience that say, I left that stage and I was just drained. I just felt so tired. It's because they've taken your energy. They needed it. So now you have to meditate on yourself and put the energy back in. Now, what children do is almost the opposite, because they'll take the energy and they'll experience it because they see you as an older person, and then they give it back. And it's so neat to feel that, because they give some of their own energy back too. And so suddenly you're jumping around and going, whoa, I feel like doing something else now. What shall we do? And you say, I don't know. We're all tired. We want to go to sleep. Yeah, but I just got energized doing this out there. So Have a good time wherever you may be. Be surrounded in beauty, harmony, and peace. Don't forget to have a good time, you know.
Beautiful. Thank you so much for this delicious interview. And this was a beautiful ending. Thank you. Thank you for all the music you create. And I hope you will create a lot more because we love it. Thank you.
Yeah. Well, I'll see what I can do. And thanks everyone who has Canyon Trilogy too, because you're the ones who got that platinum recording. You're the ones who made me famous. So it's not me, it's you.
Thank you. And big kiss to all of you Juicy co-creators. We love you and send you much love from beautiful Tucson, Arizona. Bye.